Hello and welcome to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with me, Hannah Miller. If you're new around here, this podcast is designed to encourage and equip you to really live your life to the full in your everyday life and finding purpose within it. Today's episode is, it's come from almost a question I'm asked pretty much every week. It's something that so many of my clients or other people in my life say to me, and it's around this idea of the word strategic and people saying, I just don't feel strategic enough. I'm not strategic enough. I've been told at work to work on my strategic or my strategic thinking. And people are quite down about it. They feel a bit fixed mindset about it. They think, well, this is something that I'm not, and it's not anything I can do about it. I'm just not a strategic person. I don't know how to do this. And I want to come at it from a different angle today because I think it's an unhelpful binary way of looking at it, that you're either strategic or you're not. So hopefully this is going to help us understand this idea of strategy and strategic and give everybody a way of improving it or looking at it differently. So you could be listening to this as a strategic person and you feel you're strategic, and it will help you help others. And if you're one of those people that I speak to on the daily who's telling me they're not strategic, hopefully this is going to reframe the problem so that you can look at it a little bit differently. Okay, so first of all, what even do we mean by strategy and strategic? So as you're listening to this, what comes to mind for you when you think about that word? What do you think of when you hear the word strategic? Strategic is a word that we use in all kinds of different ways. So it is actually one of the 34 Clifton strengths, strategic. I've got that strength. But in loads of ways, I wouldn't say that makes me somebody who's brilliant at strategy. And I think sometimes when people think about this word, they either think of people who are able to see 5 to 10 years in the future, or other people imagine somebody with like a strategic plan on a table, you know, like a war, I don't know what you call them, leaders in the war who were working out the strategic battle plan, or they're just able to pivot in the moment. That's how other people see the idea of strategic. But it's this idea, I think, of almost saying to people, you're not seeing the bigger picture. I think that's often what people mean. They mean you're not able to step back and see the bigger picture. You're just stuck in the doing. And so I think the use of the word strategic is possibly not really very helpful, and we need to say what we mean, because being able to see the bigger picture is not the same as being able to be strategic. And let's try and separate those two things out. Now, interestingly, 96% of leaders say that they just don't have the time to think strategically. And on top of that, Harvard Business School tells us it isn't about being somebody who is either strategic or not. It's about a process that we can learn. So we'll come back to some of that in a little bit more detail as about the solutions, but maybe you're even just thinking about this whole concept in the wrong way. And it's often people who are perhaps more relational or the really good executors who feel like they're not strategic enough. And it comes back to this idea of, you know, you're not stepping away from the doing or the interactions with people to actually do the strategic thing. So maybe what we mean here is actually how do we stop ourselves from being stuck in the day-to-day? And to be honest, that is a problem for, as we've just said, 96% of people. And it's a battle and it's a fight because none of us have enough time to do strategic thinking, and it has to be planned in or it just won't happen. Even in my workplace, we have put some things in place to help us to do the strategic thinking better because there's always so much to do. I'm not sitting around going, oh, I'd love some stuff to do because all I'm doing is being strategic. I will not do it if I do not fight for it. And so we've got to design the way we work to enable this stuff to happen. Okay, so maybe the first thing to do is, as we come back to this phrase, is to consider, are you really not strategic, or do you just not think strategically in the way that you're assuming you should? Are you using a narrow definition of the word? And also, are you comparing yourself to somebody else's definition of strategy? Have you ever asked the person who says you're not strategic enough what they even mean by that? I would really encourage you to unpack it and say, what is it that you're looking for in me that you're not seeing? Because it could be that your definition of strategic is wildly different from each other. And feeling that you're not strategic isn't the same as actually not being strategic. Just because you feel something doesn't make it true. And I want to encourage you to spot strategic behaviours in yourself that you've maybe never seen it as that. And I'm going to unpack that with you as we go. Okay, so I think the idea of strategy is much bigger than just 5-year plans, okay? There is the strategic plan, the 5, the 10-year thinking of where something is going, but strategy is also about decision making. That can be medium-term decision making, and it can be the decision making that happens on the daily. It's the problem solving, it's the thinking ahead. And actually, the truth is every single one of us practices strategy in some way, shape or form, whether that's in your workplace, whether it's in the way you plan your life, manage your time, your parenting, your relationships, you're doing it. And you've got to learn to spot it and see how it happens for you. So let me give you what I've learned about myself. I've learned that my type of strategic thinking is that when someone is talking to me and they've got a bit of a problem or a situation, one of the things that I've noticed I do is that I am quickly thinking about possible options for that person. So whether this is a friend, my friends will tell you I do this, whether this is a friend or whether it is a workplace situation, as they're telling me their situation, my brain is firing and thinking of what they could do next, solutions. And actually, I've noticed that what my brain does quite quickly is eliminate possible options and pick one and think this is what they need to do. Now, there are times and places where it's helpful to share that information, and there's times and places where it's better that I listen, ask questions, and let them get themselves, i.e. when I'm coaching people. There are times to help people and just say, I think this might be what you need to do. As a parent, I'm doing it too. I can see a problem and my brain, when someone talks to me about that problem, my brain is thinking, right, I think this is the best route for you. That is probably what natural strategy looks like for me. That probably comes easier to me than it does my husband. But if you use the definition of strategy like a strategic game, like Risk or chess, he will beat me 99 times out of 100 at those games. Because where I'm good at seeing the initial next step, he's so much better at planning out a few steps in a row. And he can see that way through. So when I play chess, I will go, oh, I think this is a really good idea, and I'll move. But what I haven't got a lot of patience to do is to plot out what might happen 3 moves from here. And that's what I don't do so well. So I'm great at seeing that like long-term direct, like that longer term, this is, you need to sell your house, you need to move here, those kind of things. But I'm not always the one that can see all the details of the possible permutations. I need people to do that with me. Does that make me not strategic? No, I know I'm strategic and I can do it because I have a broader definition of the word. Some people are so good at seeing 5 years from now, but they can't see what they've got to do in a month. So another type of strategic is people who are very futuristic in their thinking, and they can go 5 years from now, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and we're going to live here, and I'm going to be doing this job and blah, blah, blah. And it's as if it's the living daylights for them right now. I find that so amazing, but they can't find necessarily the way to get there, and they need some help to get there. So I think learning to spot the environments that help you be strategic is a really helpful thing to do. And I have paid attention and recognised that the other thing that massively helps me is relationship and conversation. And as I talk, as I have conversations, strategic thoughts come out of my mouth. If I was left alone in a room to do strategic thinking on my own for 2 days, I honestly would really struggle to do my best thinking. And others of you listening will go, gosh, being alone for a couple of days gives me the best environment to do my best thinking. And so we have to carve out the time, but then get the conditions right for it. So knowing who you are, it is not better that you can do it on your own, that I might need to do it with others. And it's not better that I need to do it with others and be on my own. Bill Gates famously would go away every year, I think for a week at a time, to a cabin where he would go completely off the grid, no signal whatsoever. And in that place, he would do his strategic thinking. Oh my goodness, if I did that, it would be really good for me on a mental health level. But I don't think I would do my best strategic thinking. I might have an idea, but I would need to be with others to carve that out and to see it come to pass. So working with the person you've made to be is really, really important so that you can access the strategic that is within you. So I want to give you a few ideas of how you might be more strategic than you realise. I've given you some examples from my own life, but there are let's dig into a few types of things. So if you are a relational person, you might be more strategic because of the way you use the resource of people, and you can see who needs to be doing what. Right people in right roles in right situations, and playing to the people's strengths around you. If you are somebody who has a lot of empathy, natural empathy and emotion, that fact that you can understand people might mean that you're anticipating their needs. That is strategic. So let me give you an example. If you are on the leadership team and one of the leaders says we need to move this person to this position and do X, Y, Z, if you are able to anticipate how that's going to cause people issues, that is a type of strategic thinking. You've just probably never seen it as that. You've just thought, I'm just aware of people. Well, no, you are strategizing around the human aspect of a decision rather than just a plan. If you've got adaptability in your personality, I don't. I would love to. Adaptable people are brilliant at going, we'll do this. Oh, we'll change our plan and we'll do this. And they adapt to situations. That's being able to pivot quickly and to do something that you didn't plan to do. They aren't overthinkers, and they wouldn't probably have a long-term strategic plan by nature, but they are brilliant at pivoting when the strategic plan doesn't go to plan. So they bring that immediacy to situations and adapt and bring that strategic to the moment. Let's do this instead. Okay, so that's another way of being strategic. Creativity. I'd like to talk about creativity another day. I'd like to do a whole podcast on I don't feel like I'm creative, because that is a massive bugbear of mine. But creativity, let's use the definition that's used a lot. A creative mind or an innovative mind will see different possibilities and different solutions. So someone might have a 5-year plan or a direction of travel, but you could bring a very innovative way to how that comes about. There are tried and tested routes, and then there are things we've never tried before. And I love being around people that don't just go with plan A, plan B, plan C, but they've come up with their own plan X that nobody else has thought of yet. And that is that kind of possibility thinking, or the ability to just go, oh, well, what's the really random way we could get here? And that, again, is a type of strategic thinking. And I do think that if you are a planner and an executor, there is an element of strategy in that. You have taken a bigger picture thing and you have enabled it to actually to take place. It's pointless having a great idea of where you want to be if nobody knows how to execute it. And that is not like second tier, okay? I think what's often being spoken about as you move through sort of like responsibilities in the workplace, or you feel like I can't go any higher in a workplace because I'm not strategic enough, you need to learn and understand what your strategic looks like so that you've got a good answer for that. And you can say, actually, these are the environments that enable me to be strategic, rather than seeing it as like a strategy ceiling, which is I can't go beyond this point because I can't do that. I also think, without stating the obvious, no leader, no person has everything they need to solve a problem and to make a plan. Nobody does it completely on their own. So who else do you need? Who fills the gaps for you? You know, if you are really good at strategizing, who's going to bring that executing plan alongside it? If you're really good at innovating, who's going to stress test your idea for you? Nobody can do all of those things within one person. So I think there's a really important thing for you to recognize there, that you may need some partners. Like I need a sounding board, and when I have one, my strategic really improves in the way it comes about. I'm a trustee of a few charities, and I am not the most like pre-thought out strategic thinker in the room. So when we get the minutes or we hear about a big problem, in fact, we've been dealing with a really sensitive issue in one of the situations that I'm currently in. And I don't find thinking about that issue beforehand very easy. I can't form all of the things I think. But when I'm in that space and I begin to dialogue with people, I can come up with really good solutions. But it's rare for me to do that until I've played with the problem in a real life situation as I've talked it through. And I am now deeply comfortable with that. And I will say, actually, I can't do that. But as long as we've got the time and space to talk about it at the time, I will be able to bring my thoughts to that. And I'm not embarrassed about that. I know it's the way I do it. Others of you will be the exact opposite to what I'm saying. There was somebody yesterday in my workshop who was like, if I don't have that time to prep and think things through on my own, I'm just not going to contribute. So again, knowing what you need in order to do your good preparation. One thing all of us need is to make specific strategic time. So for me, that looks like we have a weekly meeting, which is the short, very quick strategic responses to what's going on. Then we'll have a bit more of a monthly review. But then quarterly, we'll really look at what happened with our strategic plan and did we do it or not. And then once a year, we have a couple of days where we would deep dive into our strategy. And just to say on that, as well as giving yourself the time, get the tools. However good you are at strategic thinking, there are some fantastic tools out there. If you are somebody who's more of a planner, then use those tools. Enjoy having those tools around you. We use all kinds of things in our team that I've picked up along the way that enable us to do it better. So some of the ways you might self-sabotage is by just thinking it's for other people. So if you listen to that lie and think, yeah, I'm just not a strategic person, that's a fixed mindset and you take yourself out the game. I've encouraged you to spot it in your life so that you can think, well, actually, this is what strategic looks like for me and these are the conditions for me. It is not for other people. And you don't have to be a long-term planner in order to do strategic. Another way we can self-sabotage is to just not give yourself the time to have put more in place. So all you're doing is the reactive. The number of people I talk to, they just cannot get out of the reactive. They just live on the hamster wheel of this is what's happening now. You've got to fight to get out of that place. Nobody is going to grant you the time unless there's a process in place where you do that. Nobody's going to say, take 2 hours to step off the hamster wheel. That's just not going to happen. And yet, if you don't, all you're going to do is remain in the same churn and nothing will change. And I think the other thing you can do is just get too complicated about this. And it becomes this strategic, thing that's over there that is unreachable and nebulous. It's actually not that big a thing. It's just a type of thinking. It's a type of thinking that helps us make decisions, think ahead and problem solve. And most of us can do one bit of that. And all of you make decisions. You all who are listening to this podcast made a decision to listen to this. You got dressed today. You have a job and you decide what you're going to eat for dinner and so on and so forth. So how can you build your strategic thinking? To summarise what I've said, the first thing you need to do is to just lean into who you've been naturally made to be, unashamedly. I've just given you some examples around that. If you are a relational person, do your strategic thinking relationally. Collaborate, discuss, influence people, get people involved, find the right people and get them around the table and build an environment where some great strategic thinking is going to take place. If you are relational, use that aspect of who you are. If you are more of an innovative thinker, then use that imagination thinking and plot out different ways things could turn out. Enjoy doing several options and seeing what happens. And whatever you come up with, push yourself to think what would 10% more innovative or brave look like in this situation. If you're more of a planner personality, go find those tools that I mentioned. Find something that helps your strategic thinking to take place. We use something called the traction method here. There are loads of great things out there, but I am just going to mention traction. Again, we'll put it in the show notes. It's a fantastic way of building strategy into the day-to-day, into the medium term, into the long term. And you can use the traction method on your own life. So you don't have to have your own business. You can just use traction to help you think strategically about the direction of your life as well. So if you like a plan or you like a tool, there is so much out there to help your thinking be improved. And I think practically, I would say just practice it and do this. This is definitely something that if you lean into your natural personality, you can get better at. It is not this out there thing that you either can and can't do. Yes, there are going to be people that are imaginative. Yes, there are going to be people that can see long-term range. But strategic thinking, if that means just stepping out of the day-to-day, the practical thing you need to do is to step out of the day-to-day and to give yourself the space to do it. I would say, what does it look like for you to build in some thinking time to your month? How could you do something on a weekly basis or on a monthly basis to start to tweak it? Fight for it, put it in your diary, think about ways to build this into what you do. If you have only got an hour, then only use an hour. Don't do nothing because that's all you've got. If you've only got half an hour, do only half an hour. And I think another way you can develop strategic thinking is to think about some good questions. One of the things that I try to do is to think of questions I wouldn't naturally ask. So there are questions I'm going to ask. There are ways my brain is wired, but then there are other questions that don't come so naturally to me. So maybe collect some of those good questions and think about what you do not necessarily ask. What is the long-term impact of this decision? What patterns can I see? What happened last time we did this? What is the emotional impact on people if we do this? What is a different way of looking at this problem? What would happen if we turn this problem on its head? All of those kind of things that you might not do. How do I play devil's advocate with the decision that we're making? All of that. And I think another way to develop your strategic thinking is to get around some different minds. Be around people that don't think like you. I've got friends who are deeply innovative and deeply futuristic and deeply historical and deeply analytical. They don't think like I think. And so I need their thinking, and actually they need my thinking. And so it isn't about developing all the thinking. Another thing to quickly mention, I've mentioned it before, there is thinking fast and thinking slow, and we need both of those things to be going on. It's a groundbreaking book by Daniel Kahneman. I am definitely a thinking fast person by nature. Some of you listening will be more thinking slow, or you'll fall into one of those camps. The argument of the book is that we do the best thinking when we've got both of those things going on, deep thinking and quick thinking. And we've got to build environments that force us to the deep thinking. Otherwise, it's very easy to live in fast thinking. Even if that's not your preferred type, it's the way of the world that we do that. Gosh, our attention spans and our short, the fact that everything has to be done now. So I guess what I want you to hear in what I'm saying today is that you are more strategic than you think. And the next time somebody says this question to me, I'm going to send them to listen to this podcast. You are more strategic than you think. There is strategy within your personality. You have got to find a way to spot it and then harness it. It's about leveraging what you have and applying it intentionally. So as you're listening to this, I want you to think about, what does strategy already look like in your life? Where are you already practicing it? And you've never given yourself credit for that being strategy. Think about that and then begin to think about, how do I build from that starting point? Is it relational? Is it the thinking? Is it the influencing? Is it the planning? And how do I then build it some more? And again, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. How have you seen the word strategy in an unhelpful way? Where has it been used in your life? I'd love to hear some examples of that. And I'd also now love to hear from you is, where have you spotted strategic within yourself in a way that you hadn't before? Where are you starting to realise, oh yeah, that is me being strategic. I hadn't really realised that was what it was. So I hope this has reframed it for you. And I hope it's made you realise that if anyone's ever suggested there is a ceiling on your progress because of this, you've got some strategies to improve the strategy. And I hope you can see that this helps you grow your self-awareness, which is the point of this podcast. One of the key parts of our proven process is our self-awareness. We encourage people to understand themselves so that they can do better with what they have in front of them. And I don't want to just leave you feeling like you've had a pep talk. I want to leave you equipped. So there is a few tips in here around that. Get the tools, figure out and spot yourself doing strategy, and also do a bit of market research around you. Is, what do people even mean by the word? Don't eliminate yourself from this game. You can be strategic. You've just got to find the way to do it.